up in a small town in Georgia. When I was younger, I remember we went to church when I was a preschooler, but after that we didn't go to church so much. And the only time I remember God discussed in our house was at bedtime, when my mom would sit with me on the bed and tell me that I was safe and that God was watching over me. But at the age of 12, my whole view of God was kind of shattered. My parents were dealing with my brother becoming a teen dad, and it kind of rocked our whole world and changed the whole family dynamic at home. And it was a little bit of a hard time. My parents didn't know how to deal with it, and that was hard on me, but it hadn't quite broken my view of God yet. The last straw was the suicide of a girl named Shannon. She was my brother's age, so she was older, and I kind of looked up to her. She was like a role model to me. I thought she was cool, and I wanted to be like her. I decided on that day that God didn't exist. There had been too many awful things happening in my life, and I couldn't understand how God could allow any of it. To put it bluntly, my life at the time was a little bit awful. There were a lot of happy, relaxing times mixed in, but mostly I was just in this constant state of depression and anxiety. My depression and anxiety got worse and worse every year. I started having really awful anxiety attacks, and at 14 I had contemplated suicide, and I began self-harm. I became anorexic, and I barely ate. I was at the end of my rope when I went to my parents finally, and I told them I needed counseling. They listened, and I started counseling, and it made a huge difference. I could see a light at the end of the tunnel. And then a few years after that, my parents were going through a very heated divorce, and it kind of left me feeling like I didn't have a home or anywhere to go. So as an escape, I ended up studying abroad in China when I was in college, and during this trip I met a guy who also went to my university, and we started dating, and things picked up very quickly, and I decided to move in with him. But that was the worst decision of my life. The relationship ended very badly, and essentially I was kicked out of his house with nowhere to go. I relapsed, I guess you could say, and I went into another awful depression after my boyfriend had kicked me out of his house. My anxiety came back with a vengeance, and I began having frequent anxiety attacks again. I feared that I was about to go to that really dark, awful place I had been in before, and that's where I was, always depressed and anxious, and standing on the edge of a dark hole that I thought might swallow me up. Somewhere in the chaos, I met a few good friends in college. One of those friends also happened to be a friend of my now husband, Jacob. Jacob, he's like a magnet. I noticed immediately that people were just drawn to him. He is, he's so upbeat and cheerful, and he's always got a positive attitude. He's always laughing. And so I was just kind of drawn to him, and we started dating. And after about a month of dating, there was no denying that there was something very special about him, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And so one day I decided to just ask him, what is it that you have? Why are you so, happy? Why are you so positive? And he just kind of, he had a simple answer. He said, "Oh, it's Jesus," kind of with a shrug, like it was nothing. But to me, it didn't feel like nothing, because I had decided a while back that I was an atheist and that God didn't exist, and that anyone who believed otherwise was basically delusional. And so my first instinct when he told me this was to just run. I thought maybe he might try to start to convert me or something, throw some Bible verses at me or something, but he never did. He was really subtle and patient, and it was kind of, I just noticed something special about him by the way he lived his life. I saw, his actions first. I saw his heart first, and those are the things that made me want to crack open a Bible and see what Jesus was about. And there was this one time he did something extra special, extra selfless for me. It kind of just blew me away, and I just had this moment where I felt just God's presence kind of come down on me, and I just heard him say, keep him, the him being Jacob. And so that was that one moment where, I realized God was real. I couldn't deny it anymore. Even though that was the moment that I decided that God was real, my faith took a little bit longer to grow. It's, it's not like a switch you can just flip. It took me a long time to get used to church. I constantly felt like an imposter. I was baptized on November 6, 2011. It was probably about a year and a half after that one, aha moment that I had. And it took me that long to stop feeling like I was an imposter. The depression is completely gone. The anxiety is mostly gone, but I still have a little bit of it. I think I'll, have anxiety off and on for the rest of my life. But it's like night and day. I can't even believe the life transformation. I don't know, how I could possibly forget all of those, dark, bad things that happened in my past, but sometimes I do forget them. They're just kind of like, faint scars, kind of, fading away. There's just nothing like the peace of Jesus. I don't know what I would do without him. He's totally transformed me.